I found a way to encourage children all around the world to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. Gamble it! I mean, dueling with randomized mills off the top of the deck in order to accrue mathematical advantage against your opponent by creating a statistical inevitability of triggering multiple card effects you so desire. It's time to get it twisted. YouTube! Here's a bunch of replays against meta decks, showcasing the power of setting 5. In a deck you wouldn't really think to do that in. Tiaraments. Let's begin. This first replay here is against Snake Eyes. And I wanted to showcase what this deck can do, even going second, which you wouldn't really think a trap deck would be that strong at, specifically against Snake Eye as well. What you'll find is that this deck doesn't have too much interaction with spells and traps sometimes with going first, and setting 5 can be a bit of a culprit. Let's skip ahead to the end of this one and then begin our turn. Alright, we've skipped ahead a little bit, and this is what we've come down to. The usual standard setup here, using the side burst portion as well. We got 2 drawn cards off of the Decode Talker, which is a little bit scary because it means the interaction doesn't come as much from the field, but there will probably most likely be a bunch of hand traps being utilized here. They have the Masquerena locked and loaded, playing around talents by not using the Flamberge, but instead going for the field spell, Divine Temple, to summon out the Masquerena here. We're going to lead with Rhino Scream, which typically is gonna be pretty strong regardless. As Chainlink 1 here, they're gonna go Chainlink into SP Little Knight, probably trying to eliminate Kick Coloss immediately, which does make sense. We hit a Shaddoll, which is pretty nice, gives us a draw, which is some options, and Foolish Amphibian is a pretty good card in this scenario because it basically tutors the entire Visas Storefrost archetype, per se. So we're able to get all kinds of different options here. We can get a discard outlet for the Burst, which you can see is a card that we're playing in this list. Get the field spell potentially, but no real discards. So Shiren is probably not going to be the one here. The search for Heartbeat off of the Kick Coloss, that's going to allow us to actually get this Burst out of our hand here, because we do want to actually resolve it potentially. You can see we've got the Trap Trick there to pair it with something like Morella, which is able to send the transaction rollback. And that's kind of like what the style of this deck is, very much relying on the Graveyard Mills, and interacting with the Graveyard a lot, even with the Trap cards, and rollback being a huge portion of that power here. So the SP Little Knight got rid of our Kick Coloss, which is unfortunate. We don't really have too much of a way to push forward here, except with the Fusion Summon of the Winda. So if we can, like, stick this onto the field, that might be pretty powerful. They do get to protect the Decode Talker for next turn, which means Winda isn't going to be the end of the world for him. I guess it didn't really matter. They've also got Super Pulverization to out our Winda, which is pretty rough. But the thing with Tearlament and Masado is that it doesn't really have a lot of pushing power. Like, yeah, you've got your normal summon and then your Extender Shiren, but other than that, you're kind of relying on a lot of non-engine to do anything, which, I mean, admittedly, most decks are relying on non-engine, which is why trap cards are actually really cool, because you do get to force out quite a lot of their plays just with Rhino Heart and a Scream, and then from there, you can just set 3 cards. 3 cards which are pretty deadly. I mean, the Daruma Cannon, Fiend Comedian, which, if you don't know what that card is, don't worry, it'll come up in this one here. Very good card, specifically in this scenario. And against, like, Snake Eye in general. A lot of decks in general as well. You can see just how much hand advantage they've accrued, but you can only really do so much in Snake Eye to interact with back row, right? Like, the deck doesn't play Zeus, there's, like, a Nightmare Phoenix, and yeah, other than that, you kind of just have to keep grinding and pushing and hope that your opponent misuses their trap cards, which hopefully I won't, because I'm incredibly talented and skilled at the game, as you can imagine. At this point, I am basically just letting him play. Like, there's no reason for me to start flipping trap cards. I might as well just let him, you know, exhaust all of his resources, his extra deck, just allow him to push through nothing, essentially, or not really advancing the game state. There's a whole bunch of special summoning and activation of cards happening, but nothing's really happening if you think about it. Now, this is a really cool interaction. We use Rise to Full Height. This card is basically Threatening Roar. Now, you think Threatening Roar isn't that good of a card. Yeah, of course it's not. But it's a free mill that you can chain to target a monster here, namely the Tier Cash, and that won't be able to be... they basically, you're threatening her for the whole turn, because they can only attack that monster, and since that monster is no longer in the field, well, they can't attack, essentially. Now, here's the Fiend Comedian. We call the tails on the coin flip here, and it either banishes the whole grave or mills cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. So going second, if they have a full grave of, like, in this case, it was like 15 cards, we either banish their entire grave, killing their Flamberge, or we mill 15. And, you know, playing Tearlament, milling is, of course, very powerful. So yeah, they are just, like, cooking, they're just activating a bunch of cards, but, like, again, they're not really getting anywhere, and they're not really achieving anything. That is one of the weaknesses of Snake Eye, is that it doesn't interact really well against trap cards. So they entered the battle phase. Maybe a little bit of a misstep here. I probably should have went end of main just so they don't get any value off of the Zelantis. So unfortunately, it is going to... Oh, no, it actually doesn't resolve. Yeah, actually, because on resolution, it's no longer on the field from the Daruma cannon, which means because it's not co-linked to anything, it doesn't get to destroy. So actually, yeah, it worked out in the end. You can see here as well, we went for the Elemental Burst in the end phase. It's absolutely fine to get rid of the Flambirds because they already resolved it. They have like 6 cards in hand, but again... they can't do anything to your back row. Like, they have a bunch of hand traps, not a lot of which interact with trap cards. I mean, okay, I got a Droll and Lockbird. This is great if they're playing against the mirror match, potentially. But yeah, it's not really achieving anything. Just using the Keldo. I don't even know why I use the Keldo here. Whatever, I suppose. I guess from here on out, it really is just generating that advantage, making sure they can't play. And again, they don't really have a way to play too much. They got 6 cards left in their extra deck. Putting back the Princess may be a mistake. I just kind of don't want it ever to be online and have a chance of doing anything. But at this point, they're on 5,000 life points. What can they realistically do? This is basically just a formality at this stage. We're just activating cards. We're having fun. We're having a great time. And they basically can't deal with the power of Set and 5. As we get very good mills here, we're also playing Fiendish Rhino Warrior to send back Jack. Just good, like, graveyard stuff in this deck. And of course, any of the graveyard stuff you draw, some of them not ideal, like the Rise to Full Height, you can just use them as discard outlets because we play the Dinomicious for effect as well, which works kind of nicely. And you can see we just make a full board and they just have to quit. Okay, bit of a blooper reel here, but I don't know if you've ever seen this before. The game is completely frozen. The victory scene hasn't come up and I'm gonna have to restart my client. Just thought I would include this for fun, I suppose. This one, we're going second and it's a mirror match, and I guess obviously to showcase the power of this deck, I didn't really want to do too many like mirror matches per se. I wanted to focus mostly on meta decks and like Snake Eye and stuff, but I just had to show this. So anyway, our opponent's playing an absolute cooked build of tier, by the way. Just the most ridiculous things you'll see in this deck. Horus, not so unexpected. Necroface, getting a little bit weird. But it's kind of like a Maxi deterrent, basically. If your opponent Maxis you turn 1, you basically just Necroface a bunch with Snow and deck them out with Zombie Vampire. You can see here they're getting a bunch of mills off, the 8 total, and then they're just playing the game. There's also some mechanical cards they've mixed in here, because I think the mechanical cards, I believe they're like a Curious engine. I think it's like a 1-card Curious or something without using your normal summon. I believe might be the logic. I'm not 100% sure, but so our opponent is just going to play the game for us here, as you can see. Here's the fun part. They go Zombie Vampire. We mill a bunch of cards. They don't know what we're playing. It's really funny. So we've got like Morella, some trap cards. Like, as far as they're concerned, okay, cool. Worst case scenario, they're filling up our graveyard with traps. But as long as they don't let them, you know, really resolve and they can chain a bunch of things, they aren't worried too much about it. Here's the crazy portion, I suppose. The Cross Sheep triggering off of the Rukalol summon to bring back Diviner that is milled, to then send Herald to add a ritual, to then go for Ohime, which is then summoned to the field to make a... Is this a synchro? Oh, it's an overlay, right? We manipulated the level of the Diviner. We're going to go... This card is very funny. We're going for a Pilgrim Reaper, which might be a thing in TCG when they inevitably ban Beatrice for the deck. But now they can kind of see what we're playing here. We got Backjack, we got Shaddoll Hollow, which mills exactly Burst and Rollback. I think you know what's going to happen here. We go Rollback, chain the effect, destroy his entire field. He summons Rukalos, but then we start our turn with a 6-card hand. They lost on turn 0. I didn't want to show replays of me going first because I feel like that's almost biased per se. So again, I just wanted to showcase just how powerful the deck can be going second. This time we're playing against Punk. Let's jump on over to the turn 2. All right, so moving on to turn number 2. We've got 2 cards drawn, a Negate Searched SP Little Knight with the setup of a quick synchro into a bounce 4 cards. So that's what we're dealing with going second here. Let's see how we can make this one work. We got Rhino Scream. Very good going second. They're going to chain the Gabu here to negate the Rhino Heart. We still get the mills here, so we're going to try and hit something. We're going to roll back. That's kind of juicy with a Fiend Griefing and a Morella. Go battle phase just to force out the end phase bounce, which is the most important thing, really, because... yeah, against trap decks, Punk is very good because you set 5 end phase, they summon Amazing Dragon, and it bounces, I think 4 is their maximum capacity. So that's like a really terrifying card. You probably just lose the game on the spot. So forcing it out just by having a battle phase is extremely important. So we're just going to set 3 and activate the Scream. Might have a chance to trigger on their turn here. And yeah, from there, again, it's about like the strength of trap cards really relying on the fact that a lot of decks don't have meaningful ways to interact with trap cards. They have a bunch of like monster negates, bounces, Apollousa. These are all the type of tools that decks have available to them to deal with monster cards and monster interactions, but generally a lot of decks will just struggle with back row. So yeah, here at this point, you know, I could have flipped the needle ceiling. I don't think it's really worth it. We just let him cook. It was a little bit scary for a moment because I was worried about the Psychic End Punisher. I forgot this deck naturally relies on this card, so you know, that's very scary. You can see the most important aspect of Punk is the fact that it does have a lot of draw power. So playing like a, you know, smaller engine comparatively to most decks here, then you have just like a bunch of hand traps drawn off of the field spell in your combo is really the best way to interact. And of course, getting that all-important Max E is super, super relevant. We missed the coin flip here, which is kind of fine because it means we get to mill 15 cards. Yes. Your turn. Our turn. We got Backjack, Solid, Heartbeat. They have called by for the, what's it called? The Backjack, which is unfortunate for us. So we have to chain and hope that this random hit off the top is going to be relevant. Trivikarma is chained. I think we're going to get the field spell off of this. And then for the... I think I got Scream because it's like my only target left. I must have milled everything. The Backjack randomly hits Daruma Cannon. Okay, so I understand that's kind of cheating. I know, I get it, that's kind of cheating, because that is the one card that outs Psychic End Punisher and allows me to live here. So they go battle phase, they attack, we go Daruma Cannon. Why does this interaction work? Well, you see, Daruma Cannon affects the player. If a card can't be set, which you can't because it's unaffected, then it sends it. So it kind of treats it like a Link monster being sent by the opponent, which is why a Towers is outed by Daruma Cannon. We're going to go end of main here and go Dino Mishis, hit the King Sark just so they can't play on main phase 2. We don't want them to have too much ability to do stuff on our turn here, so I think just going for the main phase 3 approach of playing on your opponent's turn is the best way to approach this. Just building a field during your opponent's turn once you've got those trap cards online is really, really good, and one of the best things about this deck is like you are actually just playing on your opponent's turn here. You can see we got a bunch of mills, we got the Shiren, we're going to fuse with a face-down Paleo, which is one of the cool things about the Paleos, is that whenever they get booked, usually from your own Daruma Cannon, you can use them as fusion fodder for your Kaleido Heart. Normally you can't because they are unaffected monsters, which is weird because, you know, they make them unaffected only by all players rather than just, you know, only your opponent, which is why you can't normally use them. But occasionally this interaction comes up and it's very good. It feels a little bit weird to, like, needle sealing my entire field pretty much, but I'm not too worried about it because, again, like, milling 5 more cards with with Kikalos is fine, and I have full follow-up in my hand. You can see we basically put them down to nothing here. There's no hand traps coming out. They've exhausted most of their resources. From this point onwards, it really is just a case of make a big guy and attack for game. I mean, we can basically just go Kaleido Heart, attack. They're on 37. Punk pays itself down quite a lot. We just have a face down. And we're basically good to go. And there it is, the end of the duel, just with a simple fusion after putting them on no cards after they've exhausted all their resources. And just for the sake of showing some diversity in matchups, this time it's against Labyrinth. I will go first, but it's going first with a very weak hand. It's not that good, really. There's a couple of interactions we have here that are decent against Labyrinth, but overall, it's not the strongest hand, and why I wanted to showcase this. So it looks like they top deck Chandragleer for a turn, which is why they didn't use it in the end phase. We activate this card called Dice It. Dice It isn't the greatest card, but on average, it will mill 3. Mostly because of the fact that it's a normal trap card you can trap trick for, or interact with Backjack with, or copy with Rollback. So it's just more normal trap cards that also are acting in some kind of an engine way. We get lucky, we hit 6, milling 5 cards, but they just didn't really get anything relevant, unfortunately. We're going to go end phase and pitch with the Trivikarma. That means we can set up the next turn for a search here. No Ash Blossom, so it's probably safe to just fire off the grass looks greener. Doesn't look like we're going to do that just yet, actually. You're just trying to bait out as many cards as possible. It's really funny because Lady is a bit of a nuisance for the deck, being untargetable and indestructible. But it's important to note that they have normal trap cards that activate, which then allow you to trigger your Paleos, a good way to interrupt Lady. Remember, you don't want to have normal trap cards activate in response to their, or before their lady, because then they get free advantage. And we're a bit of an awkward situation here. They have full life. We kind of need to push quite hard to just deal with a single lady. So it's like, how much do we play into this with Maxi? That's kind of like the awkward situation we've got ourselves in right now, especially with the fact that they've got a big welcome online. This was maybe a mistake. I think I probably should have chained the Medora to interrupt the chain so that the lady cannot set from the deck, and instead I choose to summon a Paleo, which is really good advantage because I might be able to get into an Opabinia to search some more back row, but the problem is that that is more cards for them for free. A little bit of a decision-making point here to weigh up here. Unfortunately, I can't use the Paleo as a fusion fodder here because it's unaffected. If only it was face down, but that's okay. We got a Rhino Heart in hand here. We get to go into Kick Coloss, and then I don't know, like, do we decide to like combo through here? I don't actually remember, but you know, the deck has a lot of options to it. Chaining the Fiend Comedian in response to the like entire field here. Or chain in the graveyard from the Labyrinth deck, which means we either get to mill a bunch or banish the whole grave. Let's see what we hit here. We call heads, and it is indeed heads. So we will banish the entire grave here. That is 5 total cards. Lady's negated, Kick Coloss is negated. So Maxi and a skill drain. Bit of an awkward situation for us. There's a reason I didn't set the crime. Probably because there's just no way to get a monster to my hand. So I might as well just leave it on the leave it in the hand. Yeah, probably worth setting. Here's that Threatening Roar interaction. We go rise to full height, target Medora, chain the Medora. Nothing in his graveyard that's really relevant. So we're just going to put back our own cards. Maybe top deck something. Chain the Backjack. Get a spell card. That was really unlucky. I think I hit 3 spells off the top there. So it is what it is. This right here, however, is a bit of a cool interaction. So we're going to go into a Sky Cavalry. We're going to go battle phase. We're going to attack. This fulfills the summoning condition of Zeus. Main phase 2, we're going to make Zeus. And here, we activate the Zeus. And then we chain the transaction rollback to chain Needle Sealing to destroy all cards on the field, which means on the resolution of this chain, the Zeus will resolve off-field, dodging the skill drain, and basically winning the game for us, because we also get to resolve Kick Coloss and mill 5, as long as those 5 mills are decent. So, you know, they resolve Lady, we don't really care about that. They have a full field, doesn't matter, it's all going to be sent. They do get to refill their grave, I suppose, with the Chandraka. New animation! Huge, huge, huge. Never, haven't seen that yet in game. So yeah, we hit a Shiren with the Kick Coloss, we make a Rukaloss, and we have Crime Rukaloss versus 2 cards. Yeah, Solemn Warning and an Omni Negate versus Labyrinth is gonna be game. I suppose not setting the crime was good because it would have been sent from the Zeus. So I guess that was a good call. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my little showcase of 60 card Trap Tiarament. I'm sure some of you want to see the deck list, so let's have a look. You can see here, it's not exactly the same card for card build that I had in the video. I had some Shaddolls. So if you do really want to play the Shaddolls, I ended up cutting them because they just kind of were a little bit bricky. They're only really good to draw if you specifically have Shiren. And again, you want to be focusing on mostly playing on your opponent's turn, which is why we're playing a lot of trap cards. If you do really want to play the Shaddolls, I would probably cut the second Leancolia and the Olenoids. Having back row removal as engine is pretty decent, so, you know, there's a little decent amount of, like, stun running around, and being able to just MST a skill drain or a summon limit against Horus is kind of important. But yeah, this is the deck list here. It's all about milling. Most of your trap cards aren't actually that threatening, except, like, the good ones, which is, like, Daruma Cannon and Needle Sealing are probably the best trap cards for going second in Yu-Gi-Oh! Dogmatica Punishment is an option, but it uses up too much extra deck space, plus locking you out of your extra deck is just way too much of an issue. Ice Dragon's Prison is okay, but it's also really bad into some decks, so that's kind of like why we're not using it yet. This was filmed pre-Yubel, so there is a world where Ice Dragon is good now, because like Ice Dragon against their full graveyard, getting rid of Yubel and Terra Incarnate could be pretty huge. But obviously the main focus is just milling as many cards as possible. Yeah, I think most of this is not really cuttable. I threw in Reasoning here as well, just to like fill up the grave as much as possible. I think people generally call 4, but 4 usually triggers a summon of a tier, which isn't too bad. The idea is you just want to have as many Paleos in the grave as possible with the Reasoning, and then on turn 3 you can start playing with Paleos and starting to use those Morellas and rollbacks. Alright, without spending too much time yapping, thank you so much for watching. If you've watched this far, then, you know, leave a comment down below saying Tiarament strongest. If you do want to see more videos like this where I analyze some of my cool decks and break down the gameplay of said decks, usually something a little bit more different, then please leave a comment letting me know. Patreon if you haven't already, subscribe, and until next time, check me out on twitch.tv/Farfa where I stream daily. Peace out and bye!